Here's the special installation of, I believe that's the Able booth on the right side of the theater. You can see at the time they were renovating the theater, literally gutting the place, taking out all the seats. You also might notice the similarity between the size and location of their booth and the size and location of ours. Literally, the projector lens needs to be dead center with the center of the screen. We've been doing this here for 3.5 years. This week, John Harvey jacked up the projectors 4 inches. 3.5 years later, he says, no, I don't think they're center. So for you guys today, he's been working for days to raise the projectors 4 inches to try to get them more in line. And I know that something else kind of cracked me up. He changed the lighthouse, which is actually the whole bulb unit on the back of the Able projector, so it would better balance with these two because that one was getting a little too old. I said, John, you've only got 2 more weekends of shows. Doesn't matter. Let's get it right. Yep. Now, this is a really nice, classy audience, just like this one here, going to see Cinerama. You can see everybody wearing their bow ties and tuxedos and fur coats, which is politically incorrect. And you'll notice in the back there's a porthole for a projector over here and a porthole for a projector over here. They're not watching your typical run-of-the-mill movie. They're watching a movie that changed the way movies were filmed and the way sound was recorded. Before This Is Cinerama opened up, we were watching movies in mono, and we were watching basically square screens. In 1952, when This Is Cinerama opened up in 1 theater in New York, by the end of 53, it was in 4 theaters. It had made $15,400,000, and I think the top ticket prices in New York were $2.25 at the time. It was the #1 film in the country, even though it was only playing in 4 theaters. And if you go get this book, it's available in most bookstores now. You can see this little paragraph over here, which is unfortunately a little too true. It says that this is the type of film that probably won't survive because it doesn't translate to TV. The only way you can really experience it is in a theater. And in a month, there won't be any more. This Is Cinerama opened in 1952. 20th Century Fox as a studio literally shut down to try to figure out what to do to keep up with this new breaking edge technology. What they came up with was going back to that invention that came out after Napoleon, the anamorphic lens, and they opened a film. The first one's kind of funny. Anybody know what the first film was made in CinemaScope? Not the one released, the one photographed. How to Marry a Millionaire with Marilyn Monroe was the first one they completed shooting, but they thought that wasn't prestigious enough, so they actually set that one on the shelf and released the robe first, because a Bible epic was, actually a little bit more prestigious. And look what they're trying to copy. They used curved screens, or so at least the ad said, and get ready to be amazed, 3 channels of sound behind the screen, not the 7 that Cinerama was using, but 3 channels. They even took films like this Thunder Bay, if you can read this down here and kind of fuzzy there. It says that it was photographed flat in 133, that square picture. They actually would show it with lenses, cutting the picture into a 1.85 to make it look wider, and then show it on curved screens, trying to keep up with Cinerama. I think Tony fell asleep. We are under manual operation now. CinemaScope. CinemaScope would kind of take over because CinemaScope, basically, they didn't have to change the cameras, they didn't have to change the projectors. It's really a lens that distorts the image. It takes a wide slice of life, squeezes it onto the film, then they put it through a projector back in a theater. It's basically the same lens, now turned 90 degrees, and it takes that warped picture and now spreads it back out over the screen. There's a good and bad side to CinemaScope. One, it's good because it does look more realistic. You get that nice wide picture. The bad part is they don't use any more film to hold the information. In fact, you're only getting half the focus. Are there any projectionists here in the audience? You know what it's like to try to focus a scope film? Yes, folks, it fills the screen, it looks great, but try to focus it. It's a lot harder. And this is something kind of cute too. When they trademarked the name CinemaScope, we notice the capital S there. See the shape of the logo? Does it look like anything behind me? That kind of curved screen look? VistaVision, this is a brilliant idea that was actually fresh in I think it was 54 it came out with White Christmas. They would take camera and film and feed it sideways through the camera, sideways through the projector. That way they could actually use more height of the film and as much width as they wanted to. Most of the time it was 1.66 that they used, but they got a lot sharper detail. Kids, please divert your eyes. I don't want you to see that this film was made in CinemaScope. It got to kind of be a joke. People thought that Cinerama is not a gimmick. Let me emphasize that. It's not like the shell game where we're going to tell you one thing and slip another one in on you. But there were a lot of processes that came out in the 50s were nothing more than a name. So they didn't have to pay 20th Century Fox for the use of CinemaScope. They came out with Panavision, they came out with Metroscope, they got Warner Scope. In Japan and Switzerland, all these different countries would just name their own processes. And it kind of cheapened the whole experience. This is a picture of a Cinerama theater in Columbus, Ohio. This has now been torn down and it's a hotel. Here's an ad for Michael Todd's Oklahoma, the single lens projector. They're okay, Hollywood. I think they've got tickets. Yep, I see tickets. It's okay. You'll notice in the diagram it says it's a 128-degree curve. Cinerama uses 146 degrees. Why did Fred Waller choose 146, not 147 or 145? Well, it's kind of silly, but his wife told us how he used to experiment. He would take a common baseball cap and stick toothpicks through it and walk around the house noticing the location of where the toothpicks were in the brim, how it stayed in focus. It was simple. If it worked for him, if his eyes processed that information, it would work for everybody. That's how he figured out how wide the screen had to be. And it's 55 degrees tall. That's how tall you can see it. It's kind of funny in a diagram how much they tried to copy Cinerama. Behind the screen, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Same location, same amount of channels, but in 70 millimeter, channels 6 are both left and right the same. You hear a common sound instead of the separation that you do in Cinerama. Cinerama Holiday would be the second film made in Cinerama. It came out in 1955. It had a different producer, a different director. A lot of the same technical crew worked on it. It was not exactly a flop. It was the second largest film in 1955. It made over $12 million. They basically asked people when they went to see This Is Cinerama, if you like this, what do you think the next film should be? The most common response was, well, I feel like I'm actually part of the movie. You don't need to tell a story. Take me on the ultimate vacation. So Cinerama Holiday took people literally to Europe and America, the best vacation spots, and took the audience there. So the third film that came out in also 1955, Seven Wonders of the World, took people to even more exotic locations in Asia and Europe and South America. And if you want to see a stunning film, it plays next Saturday for the last time in the United States for a while. It's a pink print, but I'm very happy to say that members of the Cinerama Preservation Society have paid for, with their hard-earned money, an English soundtrack. We played it a couple months ago and amazed people. If you came early, you saw the interview with Quentin Tarantino. He flew in from Los Angeles because we advertised we had added a title, Seven Wonders, and was quite amazed with it. The Cinerama camera went into exotic regions of Africa, filmed cultures and society that don't quite exist in the same form today. Took you through the mountains of India. Here's the Cinerama camera on location. If you've seen the film, it's a real funny sequence where they take this train up this winding mountain trail, very dangerous. They get to the top of the mountain, and of course there are a couple of elephants asleep on the track, like that happens a lot, I guess. Everybody gets off the train to push the elephants out of the way, and the train starts to coast backwards. So the camera starts documenting this, and this guy who's asleep on the back of the train stays asleep as the train is winding, and the audience feels this. It's one of the most amazing You Are There sequences in Cinerama. As it goes closer and closer to the edge, whipping and winding, you too will need Dramamine. The camera goes inside of the Vatican. You get to see the Pope in Cinerama. Here's a cute marquee. I had to include this shot simply because I love a lot of these quaint things from the 50s. The camera process when you're watching Cinerama, first we take you back to the 50s via watching the movie from the 50s, but we also take you back to a quaint time when they had healthful air conditioning, right down there. People didn't lock their front doors. They left their keys in their cars. It was a lot safer, kinder world. and people got, you know, dressed up in tuxedos to go see movies. Seven Wonders wasn't exactly a flop. It was the fourth biggest film of the year, making over $13 million. Some of the guys who worked for Cinerama left to start their own company. They created a process called CineMiracle. They did away with the gigolos and just used mirrors to cut a clean edge on the edge of the picture. And they made just one movie, Windjammer. It was enough of a hit that it threatened Cinerama Incorporated. They bought them out and kind of used the prints in Cinerama theaters, and then never made another film in the process. And we are, I would guess, probably about $3,000 away from making a soundtrack for Windjammer. Unfortunately, we won't have any place to play it yet, but if you're a member of the Cinerama Preservation Society, you'll continue to get newsletters, and we'll let you know when and where it'll show. It might be John's living room next year, and we'll have to work it out with busloads of people at a time, but we'll stay in touch. The diagram on the left shows an interesting picture of kind of what happens when they would take and try to copy the Cinerama film. First off, this is the size of the 70mm frame image compared to how much area is used of Cinerama film, but that's also, it's weird, the way they copied the films. If you see How the West Was Won on DVD or Laserdisc, and you look at the little join lines, you'll see that the center panel is square instead of being a rectangle that's tall, and the left and right panels are very narrow instead of being the same size as the center panel. They literally edited out 40% of the picture area for even the DVD release, when they could have just come to John, talked to him, and made a copy of this print and showed all the picture area, which is what we hope they'll do someday. Here again is the CineMiracle process, how they would use the cameras and the projectors to bounce off of mirrors to get that wide angle view. Here's the Russian invention, the Kino panorama camera, where they would have, here's the three reels of film side by side going through the camera. Up close, if you could see it, would be the three lenses. It's kind of cute. When the Russians came out with this, I think it was about in 1956, they announced to the world that, yes, they had actually invented Cinerama, but they were keeping it a secret. Here's another well-guarded secret. This might be the 8th Cinerama film, Scent of Mystery. I love this ad. It says, first in 1896 they moved, then in 1927 they talked, now in 1958 they smell. Scent of Mystery was made in Smell-O-Vision. This was made by Mike Todd Jr., and of all things it starred in a very small role Elizabeth Taylor, who you could tell was the murderess because of her perfume. Here's a film called Polyester, made by John Waters. It was in Odorama. I'll tell you, I've seen it. It stinks. Here's one of those beautiful Cooper Cinerama theaters. I wish we could use one of these. This one in Denver, Colorado, unfortunately, has been torn down. They tore it down, I think, just about a year ago. There is one in Omaha, Nebraska, an oval theater custom built to play Cinerama, and it's spooky. I've seen pictures of the blueprints. You know what the blueprints look like? An eyeball. You walk in through the lens, and the back of the eye is where the screen is. It's spooky. Here's a Martin Cinerama. Yeah, the other one's Cooper. This one's Martin. This one was in Johannesburg, South Africa. Literally, you could go to any continent and see Cinerama. Here's one of those fun processes that has now disappeared. It was made in MonsterScope. This one was made in Wonderoscope. That's right, folks. You can see all 7 heads in focus at the same time. Dimension 150. If you read the description here, it'll tell you that dimension 150, unfortunately, was actually dimension 120. They just said 150, so it sounded like you were getting more than Cinerama, but it was nothing more than a 120-degree screen.